The Secrets of Doctor Who is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous supporters. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/donate. You're listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who, episode number 81.
I'm a doctor. I've lived for over 2,000 years. I am Scottish. I can complain about things. Shush.
Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who, where we discuss everything about the hit BBC series Doctor Who. Today we're discussing the 10th Doctor, David Tennant's story, Love and Monsters. Joining me today on the panel are Jimmy Akin. Hi, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
And Father Cory Sticha. Hi, Father Cory.
How's it going?
So I just want to take a second before we get into the discussing Doctor Who, just to let folks know, if you like Secrets of Doctor Who, please check out our other podcasts, especially Secrets of Movies and TV Shows, where we kind of discuss a broader range of topics. Recently, we talked about Netflix's Lost in Space, the new remake of that. We talked about the TV show The Good Place. We had a two-part on that. That was a lot of fun. And very recently, we're talking about the Raiders of the Lost Ark, which is fun, kind of going back a ways to my childhood. But still a great movie with lots of actually great deeper layers and hidden meanings that I think our audience would especially love. So if you're interested in that, go find it at sqpn.com/secrets, and you can subscribe there and check out all our podcasts. So Love and Monsters, we kind of we kind of talked
teased
it down. Teased it last time as in, boy, this is a bad one. But hopefully they'll make this a fun podcast to listen to, because I think we're all in agreement that this was not one of the best episodes.
No.
We're in agreement on... Oh, go ahead, Father.
I was going to say, in my opinion, at least, it was not a good one by any stretch. As I said, kind of the tail end of the last podcast, about the only thing good about it is the music from Electric Light Orchestra.
I was literally going to say that.
I love, which is a band I love. It's one of those. It's one of those bands that it comes on the radio and you crank it up, and that's about the only thing I liked about it.
Yeah. By the way, pro tip for music listeners: ELO's album "Time" is surprisingly good and also relevant to the theme of this podcast.
There you go, Time.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
So one thing that may make this podcast a little more interesting for folks is we may have some disagreement here, because I remembered Love and Monsters. I think I'd watched it once, maybe twice, but years and years ago, like a decade ago. And so I didn't remember it very well, except for the horrible monster. And, and so I was actually surprised at how good it is until the monster is revealed, which doesn't occur for 32 minutes into it. And I tried to watch it, which was, since I hadn't seen it in so long, this was easier. But I tried to kind of watch it with fresh eyes and ignore the fact that I knew this terrible monster was coming. And just say, how would I have reacted to this not knowing that? And actually, I have some criticisms of the first 32 minutes, but basically the first 2/3 of this are fine. I found them enjoyable. So, we're definitely in agreement that this is not one of the best, because after the 32-minute mark, it falls off a cliff repeatedly. But up to that point, I think it's actually fun.
Well, I will say, when you talk about the monster, what my feeling of the monster, kind of my reaction was, this was their attempt to do a Douglas Adams creature and failing miserably.
Well, let me give you a little of the background on this episode, and that'll explain why the monster was
so bad
the way it is. Yeah. So the monster was part of a contest from the TV show Blue Peter, which was a kid show in Great Britain.
That has a long-running relationship with Doctor Who.
I think it's been running at least as long, if not longer, than Doctor Who.
Right. And the connections, across network connections, have been there. And it was invented by a 9-year-old boy named William Grantham. And the monster. Yes.
Yeah.
A great British name. And isn't it Lord Grantham from? I've never watched it, but
Downton Abbey. Yeah.
Downton Abbey. Yeah. I just know the name because my wife watched it. I wouldn't watch it because I'm a,
Oh, it's fine.
It's
upstairs, downstairs with higher budget.
Yes, exactly. I was trying my manly credentials, but frankly, actually, I know a lot of real men that watch it, so just not my speed. Anyway, but the monster was supposed to, the boy was saying the monster was supposed to be like the size of a building, but it was designed to absorb things, and absorbable off was the thing. And I think because they had this monster that this kid invented as part, for the show, they kind of got themselves kind of stuck in a box so to speak, excuse the pun, but they kind of boxed themselves in with this monster that just didn't work.
Yeah. And it's interesting from a writing perspective. Now, this episode was written by Russell T Davies, the show's regenerator, I guess you could say. And he's a good writer. I mean, he's not perfect, but he's a good writer. And so you would think, well, how would something end up having this poor of a reputation? And it's because of the monster designed by a 9-year-old. I don't know why they do things like that. This is not the first kids contest that has done stuff with Doctor Who. Yeah. I guess they're doing it for publicity value, but I think it subtracts more than it adds. Right. In this case, because I think even though Russell T Davies has said complimentary things about the monster, because he has to, you can't say, oh, this kid won a contest and gave us a rubbish monster we had to work with. That kind of defeats the purpose of having the contest. Yeah. So, but he knew that the monster is weak, I think, even though he won't admit it. And so he did a couple of things in the writing that are very interesting. The first is he delayed revealing the monster as long as possible. So it can be there to offend the audience for less time. The other thing is
thank you, Russell.
Yeah, in writing, in cinematic and television writing, there are what are known as high concept stories versus character-driven stories. A high concept story is where the plot is really driving things, where you have some really interesting, intricate plot, and the characters are kind of secondary. Well, in this case, they knew they had a weak concept. The monster's going to be rubbish. And so what Russell T Davies did is he gave us a character-driven story for the vast majority of this episode. And so we get to meet these interesting, quirky characters. And we really, for New Who, where time is at a premium, we dig down pretty deep into their lives and their backstories and their psychology. And so for the first 2/3 of it, what we're really getting is a character-driven story, not a plot-driven story about these quirky characters. And I think that part of it works. It's just when the monster shows up, it just plummets in quality.
I mean, admittedly, I'm not a writer by any stretch of the imagination. The most I write are my weekly homilies. But
always put a good car chase in those.
Oh, I try to, especially if I have a car for that. But anyways, I feel like the writers, they knowing the limitations, with the youth competition and everything, I still think they could have made it a little more palatable.
There were still
it's almost like elements. Once the creature came out, they went out of their way to make it as irritating as possible beyond what the kid, and of course, not knowing, it's not like we can go look at what his actual suggestion was, what kind of accent it should have, what kind of, how should it, all those things.
I think his contribution was limited to a drawing.
Exactly.
Which you can see online.
Yeah. And see, and also the fact that it absorbs people, I think, was the
I mean, and that's the part that absorbs people isn't exactly offensive. I mean, that's been kind of a sci-fi trope for a while too.
Although the way they did it was like to have one of the characters be in his butt,
it was that kind of thing that it's butt. Like it was just they could have made it a lot less annoying. And it would they could have salvaged that part of it. I have to admit I wasn't a fan of the first half of it either, of the episode either, though. So I found Elton to be a little too annoying in his own right.
I liked Elton enough, although he's a bit dim, but what really bugged me, I mean, after the monster, which I think we all agree we didn't like, what really bugged me was the sort of the way that it kind of took these sweet people and sort of destroyed them. They had the nice people with this nice life, and it just kind of gets destroyed, and it's very sad. And I'm like, I'm sad at the end of this episode. It's really kind of a terrible ending.
Yeah, I have a number of criticisms of the ending, but before we get there, why don't we talk about the first part of the story before it all goes off the cliff?
There's two more background bits I just want to say before we get into it. One related to as we were talking about, like the high concept idea, which is it's also the first and only episode told entirely from the point of view of the Doctor's bystanders. So it's not told from the Doctor's point of view. It's only told from the point of view of there are other episodes where bystanders have or the non-doctor has doctors have important roles, like Blink.
Well, I was going to say, actually, you said first and only, and I would disagree with the only, because Blink, the Doctor, was a secondary character. Yeah, it was all written from bystanders' perspective.
Yeah, although the Doctor
through video. I mean, the Doctor is in video for most of it, but
he has more to do in that than this, doesn't he?
Not really. No,
okay. All right.
He's only in person. He's only in person at the end when they hand the script to him.
Right. And other than that, it's him reading stuff on video, and then the bystanders have to execute the plan.
Right.
I think the Doctor is in this even less. Apart from that first, the opening scene where they're doing the Scooby-Doo through the corridors.
Right.
And then the very end.
And then the flashback to Elton's house.
Right.
Yep.
So, and one of the reasons they did this was they wanted to have a 14th episode of this season.
Correct.
And so while they were filming this, they were simultaneously filming the Christmas episode with Donna Noble, the Runaway Bride.
Right. And that's common in TV production. We've talked before about the first Doctor, where they had 2 whole episodes that the first Doctor wasn't there because he was on vacation.
Right. And lots of TV shows do clip shows. They'll do one like clip show a season where we're doing all flashbacks, and it's a way of doing
which this kind of started with.
Yeah. So apparently Russell T Davies liked this so much that they incorporated these double banked like Dr. Light or Companion Light episodes in all of his seasons after that. So and
they worked. That gave us Blink.
Yeah, Blink is considered one of the best. Which I agree with, one of the best episodes of New Who.
And Midnight, which is another totally awesome one, which is a Companion Light episode.
Yes, exactly. So I have to say this episode does kind of remind me of the first episode of New Who, Rose, where a good portion of the beginning of that is Rose observing the Doctor from a distance, and Clive. You remember that Clive is the guy who introduced her to the pictures of the Doctor throughout history of the Ninth Doctor throughout history. So I did get a sort of a vibe from that as well. And then just like some, I just want to point out a little bit about about some of the actors, especially the one, the actress who played Ursula. I didn't write down her name, but she is Ursula is Shirley Henderson. Yep. Yeah, Shirley. Sorry, Shirley Henderson. Yeah. You might recognize her, which I did not and had to go look her up. I knew her from somewhere. Moaning Myrtle from Harry Potter. She's funny. The ghost in the washroom in Harry Potter. That's where she has that distinctive voice that she does. But anyway, so it's a story from the point of view of the people whose lives cross with the Doctor in some way. But we see it from their point of view, and it's sort of the idea of Like the doctor's always running around and crazy things are happening around him. People must see it. So what happens to those people? And so they're sort of like UFO nuts. They're abductee clubs or people who try to track down the UFO phenomena. And that's kind of what this is. And you've got this group of people,
Misfits.
Misfits. Mm-hmm. You have Mr. Skinner. I'm not sure what his deal was. I forget exactly what brought him to the group, but you have Bridget, whose daughter went missing in London because she's a drug addict, but this has sort of become her way of finding something.
Of having an excuse to come down on weekends and look for her daughter.
Right.
And this is
north.
kind of an excuse. Yeah.
Right.
And eventually, though, this group, even though they're brought together by the doctor, by their interest in the doctor, they end up becoming a group of friends. And we have this psychological journey that they go through, and we start to see them, step by step forming relationships as a group and then as pairs. Mm-hmm. And it's neat to see. I mean, we all, folks who listen to podcasts about science fiction, we're all kind of misfits.
Yeah, exactly.
People who make podcasts about science fiction.
Yeah. And well, I was principally thinking of us. And
yeah, exactly.
And it's nice to see misfits, having a life and bonding and having that kind of interpersonal success. That's great. As you mentioned, ELO's music is a prominent theme in this episode, and that's neat. And there's just a lot of nice little touches. Even with the opening, I was surprised at how dramatic the opening of the episode is, where we have Elton, it's like he's vlogging. They didn't have that word in 2005, but he's making a video blog, basically, and he's talking directly to the camera. And he's using some dramatic presentation methods where he's showing us events out of order for dramatic effect, which is nice. And then we get the encounter with Rose and the doctor and the alien, and it's funny. And they have the Scooby-Doo running through different doors in the same hallway sequence. And all of that's really cool. Where I think it starts to go south a little bit is when they introduce Mr. Kennedy, who will eventually be revealed as the monster, and he's unlikable. He refocuses the group's efforts on finding the doctor, and they admit his methods are more efficient than what they'd become, because they'd basically become a group of friends that wasn't hunting for the doctor anymore. But in order to set him up as the monster, Mr. Kennedy needs to come across, or they decided he needs to come across as unsympathetic. And he's so unsympathetic that I find his presence on screen taking down my enjoyment level. I was having more fun watching the quirky misfits being friends. So I don't like Mr. Kennedy that much. I like individual things that he says, like he kind of has a Freudian slip at one point where Ursula starts to give him some back talk, and he says, Ursula Blake, most likely to fight back. And it's like he's accidentally let a line slip from his tactical analysis of these characters.
Exactly.
Right.
I also like how, because he's an alien, he doesn't know how to pronounce eczema, and he keeps pronouncing it eczema. That's nice. And then eventually we get around, because of Mr. Kennedy's efforts to focus the group on the doctor, they end up finding Jackie.
Well, and I love this, the play on the trope, by the way, in this thing where they know that they have to find Rose because they have a picture of her with the doctor. And so they go out into the city of 10 million people to find this one girl, and it's like, oh, it'll be impossible. It's terrible. How do you find one girl in the millions? And the first woman he talks to says, oh, that's Rose Tyler. She lives over there with her mother.
He just happens to walk right into the marketplace, and there it is. And there she is. Oh, she's just right there.
That was a funny play on that trope. And then when he goes into the
laundromat,
he sees Jackie, goes into the laundromat, and he has like all of these things he's supposed to do in order to ingratiate himself, and she does it for him. Like she's like, it was just so funny. Like that was actually pretty funny.
That conversation is awesome. He's got like 5 steps in the plan, and he, rather than him doing any of them, Jackie takes the initiative on every single point in sequence.
Right. It was pretty funny. That was pretty good. I didn't like. It's interesting. So we've talked a lot about the way they portray Jackie, and once again, they portray poor Jackie as, you know, the cougar, the hot to trot old, you know, a middle-aged woman who's throwing herself at this younger man, and then is upset at being used. And I like the Jackie later on when she's mad at him for, you know, that, you know, right, using her to get to Rose. But I don't like when the way they start with her, and I just don't feel like Russell T Davies ever treats Jackie well, and it annoys me. I don't like that. But I think she comes off well by the end.
I thought, you know, I thought this portrayal of Jackie was more sympathetic than what we usually have gotten.
Right.
She is a cougar. She is deliberately getting Elton over to her apartment because she thinks he's attractive. And I like how Elton is clueless about that. He's coming over doing all these handyman tasks, and he thinks in his narration, it's like that apartment was jinxed. We understand Jackie's been deliberately breaking stuff to have him come over and fix it.
Right.
And then she gets to the point, he's not just eye candy for her. She decides she wants to seduce him. And he gets on board with that. And then we have this first of several emotional pivots, because Jackie has just gotten a call from Rose over the superphone, and it's brought home to her again the reality that her daughter is out there and separated from her and may be in danger, and there's nothing she can do about it. And that kills her interest in Elton, because he's like this fantasy boy for her, and she's just been crashed down back into reality by the call from Rose. And that's a really interesting emotional pivot. And it causes Elton to pivot too, because up to now, he's been just using her to try to find Rose. And he sees the vulnerability of this woman, and he pivots emotionally and decides, I just need to be friends with this woman. I'm going to get her a pizza, and we're just going to spend the evening together watching television, and we're going to have a good time, and I'm going to cheer her up. And then I'm going to go to the person I'm really interested in, Ursula, and finally step out on a limb and ask her for a date. And so Elton has just had this moment of emotional maturing, which is the second really interesting pivot. And then when he's coming back with the pizza, Jackie has found a photo of Rose in his pocket, because she was going to slip in $10 to pay him for the pizza in the pocket of his jacket. And she's found this picture of Rose. She realizes he's using him, and now she's furious at being used. And that's yet another really interesting pivot, which produces another one in Elton, because he realizes we have been just using Jackie and mistreating her for our own curiosity goals about the doctor. We don't have any pressing need to find him. We're just curious. And we've invaded this woman's home and inveigled her into a romantic relationship that lasted 15 seconds. And when Elton goes back to talk to the rest of Linda, that's their group, he's like adamant to Mr. Kennedy that Jackie is right, and this is shameful. We've used that woman. And I just find that cascade of emotional pivots really interesting. I really like that.
Yeah, that realization in Elton kind of gives him a backbone against Mr. Kennedy. I mean, he's a classic, you know, in a sense, bully who comes into this group of sort of mostly meek, mild-mannered people, and he sort of bullies them, takes over and bullies them. Like most normal people would be like, who are you? Like, come in here and tell us what to do. But he sort of blusters in, and he's got authority. He's also got Torchwood files. I don't know if you noticed that.
Oh, yes.
Get the files from Torchwood that's on the doctor. That never gets explained.
And they mention that the information on Rose from those files has been deleted by the bad wolf virus.
Yep.
Right. Yes. So we get a Bad Wolf mention. And
supposedly Harold Saxon got mentioned, but I missed it. According to Wikia, it says that he was mentioned. I don't remember hearing it.
I don't either.
I didn't search the online transcript of the episode, so I didn't see it. But maybe there might have been an oblique reference, but
it had to go by really fast. We had Mr. Saxon is the season art for the next season, the third season. Right. They also have an allusion to the fourth season arc as well. So So this episode unusually has mentions of all four of the major season arcs, allegedly counting Mr. Saxon.
Right.
By the way, a couple of notes on this part of the episode. And they actually used this word earlier, but it comes up during the Jackie sequence. For American listeners in England, the word mate means friend. Not what we would mean by mate.
We're just mates.
Yeah, we're just mates. So when Elton is saying, he and Jackie can be proper mates, or he and Ursula can be proper mates, that's not romantic.
Yes.
Also, I like in the ELO soundtrack, once Elton has had his first realization and goes for the pizza, and he's had this moment of emotional maturity, in the ELO song that covers that montage, the line we hear is "Welcome to the human race."
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I thought that was really appropriate.
There were a couple really good musical ties.
Yeah. I also liked when Jackie blows up at him, she's talking about the consequences for the people who are left behind when the doctor runs off with someone as a companion. And that little window into her world, I mean, we've seen through that window before, but this was a particularly poignant moment where, where we're invited to think about all the things that she has to deal with emotionally because her daughter just split and went on this dangerous adventure with this unknown man.
So, speaking of Elton, I kind of like Elton as a character. Like I said, he's sort of dim but likable. He's a sort of regular bloke. He likes football, or soccer as for Americans, drinking. He lists them. He likes football, drinking, going to Spain, and ELO. And that sort of describes like every British blue-collar guy
except maybe the going to Spain part.
No, actually, that's a very popular British middle-class vacation idea. That go like if you go,
guys? Okay.
Oh yeah. Like if you go to southern Spain at certain times of the year, it's all like just British folk. I mean, I think for some people it's sort of aspirational, but it's like people from New York and Boston and the Northeast going to Miami for vacation.
I was going to say it's about as cheap as, especially with like the low cost airlines they have over there in Europe. It's cheap to fly anywhere like that.
It's like
Poland
Jersey guys going to South Beach.
Yeah. Poland is kind of the same thing. So.
Okay. Yeah. So he's sort of a regular guy. Then you have Ursula, who she has a blog, which I love that because that's back when blogs were still the thing. Before social media was big, and blogs are near to my
coming
heart.
Back. Yes, they are.
I hope so. And then so we have this montage early on of Elton. He was there when the Autons came to life in Rose, the first episode. He was there for the Slitheen crashing into Big Ben. He was there for the Christmas invasion. So like these are the moments, like these doctor moments that were really kind of got him going on this quest and made him remember. When he was a kid, coming downstairs in his house and finding the doctor, the 10th doctor, standing in his living room when he was a child.
By the way, Russell T Davies has said that originally he planned to include memories of classic Who events that would have occurred in Elton's lifetime, like the Loch Ness Monster incident from Terror of the Zygons.
Okay. Yeah, I think I remember seeing something about that. They must have cut it for time, and then Elton and Ursula are mates, at least as far as he knows. Although it's pretty clear that Ursula likes him early on. That she has something. Yeah,
part of why she stands up for him to Mr. Kennedy. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like that she's a Spitfire. She really, I like her as fun. I have to say, the whole thing with Mr. Kennedy, like asking people to see him alone as everyone else was leaving, like the first time he does that with Bliss, it's so creepy, like in sort of like a creepy like sexual harassment way, and I was very uncomfortable watching it. It was ugh.
Of course, we're watching. I mean, this is 2018 when we're recording, so that's like 12 years ago. And lots of scandals later. Yeah.
Although I think in 2007 that's still really creepy. But, I know what you're saying.
It was still creepy, regardless how you look at it. But I think that was kind of the point.
Right.
I didn't. I mean, I can certainly see that vibe, but I didn't get it just because I was aware that he's going to turn into the monster and eat her as soon as everyone else is out of the way.
Yep. By the way, Linda, that was the name of their group, which is an acronym for London Investigation Detective Agency.
Yeah.
That's actually Davies plagiarized himself, but from a kid show he'd made where it was Liverpool Investigation in Detective Agency. So, so that was where that was from.
So I think we're up to the point where the reveal happens and everything starts to go disastrously wrong. Yeah,
the Absorbaloff. So this is Mr. Skinner gets absorbed, and that's when they actually Ursula had forgotten her phone, and they went to go get it, and they found the Absorbalov in his natural state, having just absorbed Mr. Skinner.
Mr. Skinner,
yeah. So what were you going to say, Jimmy, about that?
Well, one thing I did like is the fact that the monster doesn't have a name, and independently, Elton and the Doctor try out several different names based on the fact it absorbs people. And the one that the monster likes is Absorbaloff. And they both come up with that independently. And I thought that was cute.
Right.
Also, it's interesting. Rose, once Rose shows up, notes that there's because this is the other totally disgusting Russell T Davies monster we've seen are the Slitheen.
Yes.
And this is a little similar to them. It's certainly similar on the disgusting scale.
Yep.
And Rose makes a comment to the Doctor about it looks a little bit like the Slitheen, and the Doctor asks if it's from Raxacoricophalopatorius, which is the Slitheen's home planet, and it says no, I'm from the twin planet. And after the polysyllabic name of the primary planet, the Doctor says, well, what's the twin planet? And he says, Clom. So single monosyllabic planet. And that's a reference to the 4th season arc where the Clom and other celestial bodies like the lost moon of Poosh vanish.
Right.
And, so that's something we hear about again in the future. And I like that. I like the Clom bit, but I hated almost everything else here. Well, I also like the fact that when the Doctor and Rose materialize at the last minute to save Elton, they're here because of Elton, because Rose has heard from Jackie and wants to give Elton a piece of her mind, and that's the reason they showed up.
And the Doctor's pretty ticked off too on her behalf.
I did like that where Elton's, he's there on the ground. He knows he's about to get absorbed. The TARDIS appears. They come out, and he's like, you're having a go at me when there's this guy standing here?
Well,
what's going on here?
Are part of their day. So.
Yeah. So the thing was one of the things that bugs me is that Russell T Davies. I mean, I think I'm a dad. I think a fart joke is as funny as the next dad, but it seems to rely on that an awful lot. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. The Absorbaloff, when Bliss is on his rear end and he passes gas as he's letting her talk, and the Slitheen were all about the passing gas, and it's like it's so juvenile. It's just and the whole reason that Absorbaloff is there is it's so thin. It's it's heard of the Doctor and thinks it'll be a delicious feast because of his long life or something.
And experiences that he gets to absorb. Yeah. There's a telepathic consumption too here.
Right. But we don't even get much of that. It's sort of tossed off in a line or two. And it just is, it's weak. It doesn't, because it's not about it. This episode is not about any of that. It's just, we need to show this creature.
Yeah. And the way the creature is portrayed I mean, it's ugly by design, but then it's constantly licking its lips, which is, just it's overweight and constantly licking its lips. And it's portrayed very repulsively in a deliberate way, but in a way that I don't think works. Then we have, and I liked the bit where the doctor suggests that maybe the people it's eaten, who still have some degree of autonomy,
right?
Maybe they have something to say about it, and they cooperate, and that's helpful. They're struggling to inhibit the creature, and that's nice. But then Ursula, who's been absorbed, tells Elton to break the cane that Mr. Kennedy has been carrying. And when she does that, the whole monster just melts. And so here's like the secret vulnerability MacGuffin.
Right.
I thought this was weak writing. The doctor explains that it had some kind of inhibiting field that kept it from falling apart. It's like, why? Why would any creature need an inhibiting field to keep it from falling apart?
How does that work
how evolution
evolutionarily?
Works. Yeah. And so then you have the creature get absorbed, according to the doctor, by the earth. And Ursula's face momentarily starts to reform and says, "Bye-bye, Elton." And it's just very unsatisfying for this part of the ending. And then it gets even more unsatisfying. But I'll save that for if you guys have any comments about this scene.
Well, I agree. Like the whole idea that the absorbable off, it doesn't have a name for itself. It requires this limitation field to continue to exist. Like, what is it? Did someone create this in a lab? It doesn't make any sense. And I know that Doctor Who doesn't always have to make perfect sense with things, but it needs to make some sense. Like I have to buy it somehow.
It had genetic engineering with handwavium.
Exactly. Was it vibranium? What was it?
Yeah. Did they even establish it was genetically engineered? I thought it was just an inhabitant of the planet Clom.
Headcanon, I'm just
we just had they just sort of they waved their hand at it, and
the whole sense of handwavium. They just waved their hand and said, "Yeah, forget about it. You don't need to look there."
Right. The idea it dissolves into the ground. Okay, but the doctor can salvage the some of them in
Not
some
initially.
way. Right.
Well, we don't find that out for a while.
Right.
But
we first get the explanation.
Notice the deliberate irony of the absorbable off being absorbed.
Right. Yes. We do get at this point the explanation of why the doctor met Elton when Elton was a boy.
Yeah, that's my next big bone to pick. Go ahead.
Okay, so he says he was hunting a living shadow which had escaped its home dimension, and he caught it, but not before it had killed Elton's mother. Now, what he escaped from the Howling Halls? Is this a reference to something in Classic Who that I don't know?
This is totally new.
So just kind of made up wholesale right here.
What it almost is the Vashta Narada, but they haven't been invented yet.
Yeah, see, that's what I was thinking, is this was a foreshadowing of them.
And maybe an idea for another episode that Davies never got around to making or something.
Or something, but I just get the feeling here that this is just totally tacked on. And it's cheap. It's emotionally cheap. And it doesn't make any sense on the narrative level because so what we've been told thus far is that when he was a boy, Elton went downstairs one night and found the doctor, and that's his kind of initiating event to the whole sequence of things that happen with the doctor for him. And then here at the last minute, we discover that was the night his mom died, and his mom was laying there on the floor next to where the doctor was standing. So number one problem, we get this montage now about this woman we've never met and don't care about.
Right.
We haven't had anything done to establish her as a presence before right now.
It's completely emotionally manipulative.
They haven't done the work they need to make us have a genuine investment in this woman, so it comes off as cheap emotionalism. Secondly, it makes no sense logically, because if I was a boy and I came down and found a strange man in my house and my mom laying there dead on the floor, I would remember that those things happened on the same night, and I would suspect they were causally connected. Right. And so if I were Elton, I would grow up thinking the doctor killed my mom. Mm-hmm. And they don't go there at all. And of course they can't, because that would ruin the comedic tone if Elton had a revenge justice motive. And so it just makes no sense emotionally or narratively.
Right. You're right. It felt tacked on. It felt like we needed to have, like, what they could have done was just have Elton as a boy walking into the garden and finding the doctor there, getting into the TARDIS. Like, there was no reason to have, like, there was no reason for for his mom to be dead. Like, just the idea of encountering the doctor who goes into the TARDIS and the TARDIS disappears would have been enough to have this boy motivated for the rest of his life to find out more about this man, which is essentially what happens with Amy Pond. Right? You know, I mean, this is the Amy Pond story again. It gets recycled in a better way. They do it better. And it's just Russell T Davies like ham fists it here, and it doesn't work.
It feels like, I mean, you look at the end of it. The end is a very dark tone.
Yeah, it's a downer ending.
We forget because we must,
because everybody dies. I hate that.
I don't mind downer endings. In fact, I kind of prefer them to the Stephen Moffat last minute happy endings sometimes. But like Midnight is a downer ending, but it's an awesome episode, and
but it earns it.
Yeah. I don't mind downer episodes, and I don't mind in principle that, and this is kind of my third nitpick for the ending. If you're going to kill somebody for dramatic consequences, and if you're going to let them stay dead, fine. But don't bring one of the four people back in this gross head on a cement slab form. Yes. Because the doctor says, I can bring back sort of the most recently absorbed, who was absorbed 3 minutes before Mr. Skinner.
Right.
You know, I mean, if you're going to bring anybody back, bring them all back and bring them and let them be happy and let them be normal humans again. But don't do what you did here, which is neither the downer ending of they all died or the happy ending of they were all saved. This in between thing, we have this gross head on a slab. Well,
and then they go there, which is the Elton says they have a relationship, even an intimate one, and I'm like that's gross. Like, that was wrong.
Not need to know that.
Yeah. That was, I think, to me, that was the sort of that line that just got crossed too far, and it just, that was done because for prurient effect and for nothing else. There was no need for that, and it sort of symbolizes so much of this episode it just was no need to do this. I don't like you said, Jimmy. I don't mind if we end up with a sad ending or something if we earn it, like. Death in the library, with where River Song gives her life, although because she's in reverse order, it's a Moffat ending. But there's sort of we do kind of earn that through we walk the stages with her through to the end, sort of like a way of the cross to that end. We earn that. Here, I don't know. It just feels meaningless. These deaths feel meaningless. Of these nice people who didn't deserve it, and it just. I suppose you can have a story, like you could tell a story where, you could talk about the arbitrariness of meaningless deaths and how in a fallen world that we live in. I guess you could tell that story. I don't really necessarily want it from Doctor Who, at least not in this form.
Well, so I think part of it is Russell T Davies' worldview is creeping through here, because he's an atheist, and that. If you're an atheist, it raises questions about meaning in life and how do we find meaning. And that's really the driving thing behind Elton's final speech about salvation and damnation being the same thing, and the world, you have this, and also I think it's relevant here. Russell T Davies also happens to be gay. And I think that's part of what is going on in that final speech too, is he's justifying alternative love relationships. And he talks about how you're given this idea, Elton talks about how you're given this idea that you grow up, you get a job, you get married, you have kids. But in reality, the world is so much darker than that, and so much madder than that, and so much better than that. And I think what we have here is a case of Russell T Davies' own personal worldview is just coming out in this speech.
So justifying the idea that, living a the traditional, married couple with kids, living a regular suburban life, et cetera, justifying what that is not necessarily an ideal, because that's not the life he lives. Yeah, I wanted to kind of look at that statement. It was apparently, he says it's a quote from Stephen King. Salvation and damnation are the same thing. Not
literally.
Right. Well, what does it mean? Do you have an idea of what that's supposed to mean?
I think it means that having, and I think there is a genuine insight here. I wouldn't express it that way, but the genuine insight is that when we are in bad situations and are saved from them, we in our connections with other people, there is a simultaneous pleasure and relief, but there's also a weight and pain that we carry. And that's true in a marriage. I mean, spouses are not always going to agree. There's both a love and there's some pain. It's you always hurt the one you love thing. And you're always hurt by them. And so you can't have one without the other. You, if you want, or at least you can't have the love without the vulnerability. And so in any loving relationship, there's a vulnerability that is going to hurt from time to time, but that doesn't mean it's not worth it. And so
right.
I think we see that playing out to some degree in the relationships of these characters in the Linda group. They find love and meaning with each other, but it's only through adversity. And I think that that's a valid statement emotionally about the human experience more broadly.
So in the sense when it says salvation, damnation, it really means suffering.
Yeah.
In that. So the quote is originally
pleasure
from
and suffering are inextricably intertwined.
Right. It's from the Stephen King's book, The Green Mile. And it says sometimes there is absolutely no difference at all between salvation and damnation. And actually, that's a big difference. Sometimes there's no difference.
Right.
As opposed to the way Davies puts it, which is there is no difference.
Correct.
Or they are the same thing. So, yeah, it's an interesting distinction that whether it maybe subconsciously or in a Freudian slip, changes it.
And putting the caveat that Stephen King did originally, it really does change it, where it is talking, we would call it, again, the cross. We talked about the way of the cross.
Yeah.
Yes. Again, understanding salvation, damnation, not in the strict sense of going to heaven versus going to hell, but in the sense of, joy versus sorrow.
Right. Yeah. I think, and in fact, I think that's what in that sense, it perhaps, I never read The Green Mile, but I remember seeing the movie. And,
it's a great book. I really enjoyed it, but anyways.
And the movie was great too. And in the context of what I remember, I could see where that would play out is, it's about a death row inmate and a death row guard. And it playing out in that context where, the sort of, the guy on death row is damned in the sense of he's going to go to the chair, and going to the chair for this guy is the same. It's his salvation and his damnation. He's being electrocuted to death. He's receiving capital punishment, but that ending, that finality, it saves him from the continuing suffering in that sense. I don't think that's what I don't think that's what Russell T Davies, even abstracted, is talking about here. So interesting. So I guess we come to the end of this, saying what we started with, which is, I think I agree with you, Jimmy, that I liked this up to about that 30-minute mark where Mr. Kennedy shows up. Reveals himself, right? I mean, I even prefer it to before he shows up, but when he reveals himself, that's when it falls off a cliff,
and just keeps hitting rocks on the way down.
Yeah, ow, oh, ow, oh, all the way to the bottom.
It's like Homer Simpson.
Yeah. So I think I agree with you. I mean, is there anything else that we missed, or any you want to give a final reckoning of this episode? Because I think we covered it pretty well. Yeah. To Chris Chibnall, let's not do this.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, let's.
The Dr. Light episodes are good if they're done right. This was not done right.
Yeah. Well, Companion Light is better than Dr. Light, and if you do a Dr. Light, look at Blink as your example, not
exactly
Love and Monsters. So I think that's good. Well, I think that's it from us on this episode. I want to ask the listener, tell us what you thought. Is this your favorite? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Do you have a different perspective? We'd love to hear from you. So tell us what you think of Love and Monsters. If you send us an audio feedback, we'd love to play it, during the podcast, so others can hear other voices than ours, and we can respond. You can do that by making an audio recording, say, on your phone using the voice memo function and emailing it to drwho@sqpn.com. Or if you want to just go the old-fashioned route and write a comment or type it out, don't write it because you're not going to be able to mail it to us, but type it out by visiting sqpn.com or going to the Secrets of Doctor Who Facebook page and leaving a comment on the post for this show in either of those places. You can find links to our personal social media and our websites on our show notes on sqpn.com. We'll be back next time when we'll be discussing the second Doctor story, the Patrick Troughton story, The Tomb of the Cybermen, as we take a journey through the great enemies of the Doctor. That's our next big series of classic Who episodes that we're going to be looking at. So we're starting with the Cybermen. So until then, Father Cory Sticha, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of Doctor Who.
Always glad to be here, and thank you, Dom.
And Jimmy Akin, thank you as well.
Thanks, Dom.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening, and remember, if there's one thing I really, really love, Jeff Lynne and the Electric Light Orchestra, because you can't beat a bit of ELO.
Sun is shining in the sky. There ain't a cloud in sight.
When will I see you again?
Soon, I expect. Or later. One of those.